father of 2 adult daughters, and the impact that he's had on Metropolitan Family Services, a 162-year-old not-for-profit, one of the oldest, I guess the oldest charter not-for-profit in the state of Illinois, is that he oversees employees, about 1,000 employees, and in the time that he's been there since 2011, he's doubled the amount of revenue that the organization has available to serve some 80,000 families. So Rick, if you'd come up and share some background and evidence, thank you.
I'm going to put my stopwatch on because I have a limit here. Again, David, Rotary Club, thank you for having me here. I'm going to tell you a little bit about an organization that most of you have never heard about, and yet it is the first charter not-for-profit in the state of Illinois. And so we could quibble about whether it's the oldest not-for-profit, and I would say it is, because before there were not-for-profits. There were other charities, but they weren't yet established as not-for-profits. Our founding was in 1857 as a charter organization, but our roots go back to 1850. And so I'm going to spare you from a ton of the history and just bring you up to the present. I will only tell you a couple of things about the history. One, you've heard of other prominent nonprofit organizations. The one that comes most to mind is the Jane Addams Hull House. And so they were founded about 1889 or something like that. And that one's special to me because I grew up in a southern house called the Erie Neighborhood House. And Jane Addams is always seen as the hero of the Southern House movement, but also of women's rights and children's rights, etc. We're proud in Metropolitan that she served on our board for 30 years. And I'll tell you more about that as we go through this presentation about Metropolitan. We also house the second oldest legal aid clinic in the country. So the Legal Aid Society here of Chicago, New York, only one older is New York's. We were responsible for helping found Northwestern University and the University of Chicago's first legal aid clinics, and worked with them and Jane Addams on developing the child welfare and child protection laws that we have in the state and later spread to the country. So it's a little bit more about our history, but I'm going to shoot to the, well, I should tell you what our original name was. It was the Chicago Relief and Aid Society was the first name. And then there was a Bureau of Charities that came together to form what then became United Charities, which we worked for 100 years. We helped found the United Way. And so our name was very closely associated with the United Way for many, many years. So when they had their struggles in the early 90s, our board made a decision to change the name from United Charities to Metropolitan Family Services to better reflect what we did in this metropolitan region, but also to separate the brands from each other. And we've been Metropolitan Family Services ever since, but we date back to again, 1850. So welcome to Metropolitan Family Services. I'm not going to be able to see that far, so you're going to test my knowledge of our own organization. And so a little bit about Metropolitan Family Services is that this piece here was developed about 6 years ago now, and we say we like to begin with bold leadership, and that bold leadership allows us the resources and energy to provide wraparound services that we're well known for. We then turn that into measurable results for the communities that we serve, and we demonstrate a community commitment. If we do that all correctly, then we further embolden the leaders to provide us more resources for wraparound services. We get better at the measurable results, and after 162 years, it's an authentic commitment to community. We go to communities that we don't need. In many of the communities we've been to, it's been 50, 60, 70 years that we've been at those communities, and I'll tell you a little bit about them in a second. But on the inside, we talk about our 4 E's. And there are our guiding principles and the areas where we bucket our programs. We say we like to lead with education, so we want to lead providers in the state and in the DuPage County of early childhood development services. So we serve about 1,000 children in DuPage County a year in 0 to 5 services, and about 1,000 children here in Chicago in 0 to 5 services. In addition to that, we are in about 25 Chicago public schools providing community schools. Community schools programming, and then those are generally our education programs. We do a little bit of adult well, but those are the two big ones. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on that. Emotional wellness, I think a subject that you all have heard about a lot, and certainly from the C4 perspective here, mental health services. I'm one of the lead providers at children, adolescent, and adult mental health services. We work closely with organizations like C4, Thresholds, and others to provide those services across the metropolitan region. So that's emotional wellness. The next one for us is economic stability. So that one is pretty simple, clear-cut. Jobs. It's job training, job preparation, job placement, and then job support while people are in the jobs. Most of the people we work with are residents of the Chicago Housing Authority, but not exclusively. We also have our Young Fathers program and increasingly new programs on the northwest side of the city, and likely soon coming to a village near you in DuPage County. So that's the next one. And then the last one is empowerment, and I told you a little bit about that. We just needed another E, to be quite frank with you. So it's both where we bucket our historic legal aid society, and we empower people by providing them equal justice to the law, so it kind of makes sense. But also we put our resource and referral services in there. One little known fact about Metropolitan Family Services, we are arguably the most comprehensive provider of domestic violence services in the region, and nobody's ever heard of MFS doing that. And I'll share more about that as we click to a couple more slides. So David talked about the growth. David talked about the growth here about Metropolitan. So I arrived 8 years ago, and our budget was then $32.5 million in operating budget, and we served 43,000 people a year. You fast forward to today, we are serving just over 80,000 people a year, and our budget has grown to about $70 million in operating support. David wouldn't know that because it's recent, right? We've been growing recently in addition. And you're probably wondering, so why? How did that come about? It came about during the downturn in the economy. It also came about during the last 4 years where Springfield couldn't figure out how to put a budget together. So all of that, we would continue to grow. And so the thing I say about that is that when people say, how could you grow when there's a scarcity of resources both in the public and the private space? And we generally answer by saying that when times are tough, people give to those organizations they most trust. And I think that happened at Metropolitan Family Services. I'll click to this next slide, and this is essentially what happened. So I was minding my own business as the new CEO of Metropolitan Family Services, and then I get a call from the COO of Hub International. His CEO was on the Jane Addams Hull House board, and they each knew that these two historic organizations, the Jane Addams Hull House and Metropolitan Family Services, had talked merger just 5 years before that conversation with me 8 years ago. And so the CEO asked the COO to get this guy to get in a room with Jane Addams Hull House to talk about partnership. And so I assumed they want to talk merger again. And so we put together a team, our CFO, our COO, and one of our members of the board. And we went and met with them. And almost immediately when we sat down with the equivalents of the Hull House, they said to us, and it was quite stunning, they said, we want you to take care of our people, those we serve and those that work here. And then all of a sudden you see a tear streaming down one of their faces. And we were shocked, because this is the historic Hull House, much more prominent than Metropolitan Family Services in the eyes of many across the country and across the world. And so we almost immediately said, can we have a recess? Because we didn't know how to react. They're crying, we're shocked. And so we had to go back and talk. We gathered ourselves, we came back and said, listened a little longer, and then we said, well, we can do this. We can help with the programs that fit Metropolitan Family Services, and those that don't fit within our current array of services, we can help you transfer them to other quality organizations. So we did that. I essentially became the communicator of that to all of their funders, public and private, and we announced their bankruptcy, And today, what I can say is we still have legacy Hull House programs in the domestic violence area, which I'll talk about in a second, is one of them. We also own the rights to the Jane Addams Hull House name. That's something we desperately wanted to protect and keep with Metropolitan Family Services. We think there's future opportunities in reviving that name. So that's one of the things that happened. That immediately brought in additional resources, and overnight employees that were once Hull House employees came over to MFS. I tried to move more quickly. LifeLink was an organization in DuPage County that provided early childhood education services. They decided they wanted to get out of that business, literally business, because it's a money loser, and it was a money loser for them. And so the feds put out an application, they contacted us, we applied, we won the right to run a losing business, and so now we provide early childhood services in partnership, this is the key component, in partnership with the school districts in DuPage County. And we were not doing it ourselves, we were doing it in partnership, and that's the only way that we can make the money work. We actually provide those services inside the academic buildings, the school buildings of our partners out in DuPage County. And it's all the villages that you know, cities that you know, Addison, West Chicago, places like Warrenville and Wheaton, and even Burr Ridge. We have classrooms where we serve children who are poor and provide high quality early childhood services. So that's the second one. Oh, I'm sorry. Family Shelter Services, just on April 1st of this year, we merged with the DuPage organization called Family Shelter Services. They're the only provider, leading provider of domestic violence services and shelters in DuPage County. And so we merged with them on April 1st, making us what I believe now is the most comprehensive provider. And I say that because we provide everything from the moment a victim decides they need to go to the courthouse and call the police and get an order of protection, we're there as advocates. And then throughout the entire process, now from advocating for them to representing them through our legal aid society, up and through a possible divorce, and now through shelters, mental health, childcare for the children, we can now do it all within the Metropolitan Family Services umbrella. And so that's new to us. That is overnight. We inherited about 70 new employees, colleagues, and a budget increased by about 4.5 million as a result. We'll increase this year as a result of that. And that was an authentic merger. They don't happen in the nonprofit sector. They're very rare. Because usually when somebody comes to me and says, we want to merge with you, but really they're asking for a lifestyle. They're asking for us to use our endowment to bail them out. And this one had human assets, capital assets, and programmatic assets that were right up in line and aligned with what we do. So that's the second one. And then the last one is Communities Partnering for Peace, and that's our 2-year-old effort now to reduce the gun violence in the city of Chicago. And so you're all probably saying, how's that going, huh?
Yeah.
How's that working out for you? Well, I can tell you this, that when we started, I remember almost to the day, December 12th of 2016, we met with many of our partners, and we were all thinking what you were thinking, what is going on with Chicago? There's this carnage going on in the street, and nobody seems to have an answer. And so we, as some of the leading providers of services, said we either get in or get out of people's way. That was our only option. And so we decided at that point to get into this deal. And Metropolitan traditionally doesn't do that, but we got in that day. And what came about as a result is a partnership of 9 organizations, which we lead, of leading providers of violence reduction activities. Some people call it interruption, some people call it intervention, some people call it street outreach, depending on the city, depending on the neighborhood, it has a different name. Los Angeles calls it intervention, Chicago's outreach, and then interruption has been done by Cure Violence and Ceasefire in the past. So we joined forces with these 9 organizations that are up here in those communities, so primarily South Side and West Side communities. You can tell there that we're not on the far south side, and that's because there are other partners of ours there, and we work with them. People that you've heard in the news come to mind. Arnie Duncan and his CREP program, they're further south than we are, and so we're in direct dialogue with them all the time. Is the primary reason we're not far south. But we are in those communities, and again, it's Austin, it's New City, it's Inglewood. I don't have to read them all to you, but it's the ones you read about in the newspaper. So I can say to you that from the year we started, again, 2 years ago, not quite to the day, we started, and that year there was a 20% reduction in homicides. The next year there was approximately 19% reduction in homicides, and it's slightly higher reduction in shooting incidents. So that's still, in our opinion, it's a drop in the bucket. And you probably are wondering, so are you saying that you were a result of that? We're not at all. What we are saying is that because of these 9 organizations and the new way that we operate and partner with each other, that we have now become part of an important ecosystem to help bring this violence down. It includes the police, which are our partners, and have traveled with us to New York and Los Angeles to learn from those 2 huge cities that while they are much bigger in population, have much lower homicide rates than Chicago. And you know this, I think you've heard this already. So for example, Los Angeles has 1.6 million more people than Chicago, and yet they have 1/3 of our gun violence. So, so just to give you a sense, they have figured something out. And I doubt that they have smarter people or more committed organizations or more well-meaning police, but they figured something out. And I think what they figured out is this violence reduction model that's being housed by one entity. They created a training academy for all these outreach and violence reduction workers. And so we essentially have, quite frankly, copied their model and put it into the Chicago context. So they have something called an Urban Peace Institute. We created the Metropolitan Peace Academy. Synonyms, similar things, but we brought it's not a direct, it doesn't translate directly to the Chicago context. So we had to bring our own trainers. We have 3 PhDs, all African-American males from this city that are lead trainers, and they co-facilitate the training for these individuals with the most experienced outreach workers. And we have a graduation June 20th, is that right? You're all invited, if you want to see what that is like, to have former gangbangers, people living the life, who have now matured, some of them are my age, some are a little younger, only a few are a little older, and they have turned their life around. They are examples of transformation. They are living proof that it can happen, and now they spend their lives trying to save other people's lives. And so, but in order to do that, we train them on with the best available science and practice out there, so they do that. We had a good start of the year, largely because it was cold, I think, and at least that's what the news was saying, the media was saying. And then we had a couple of really violent weekends. The last one weekend ago and 2 weekends ago with the holiday, very violent. But in general, we continue to trend down. Now, no death is acceptable, but we're trying to get to the point where we drop Chicago's homicides to 400, and then 300, and then 200. And if we were a city the size of LA, Los Angeles, and we had their same homicide rate, we should be at about 175. And again, what we have here is unacceptable. We're in the 600 range. So that's what we are doing most recently. Those 4 programs together represent how we are growing and evolving in Chicago. Our legal aid services are growing as well. I've said a lot. I want to thank you for your time and attention, and we wanted to provide enough time for you to ask just a few questions. I've kept to 18 minutes and 30 seconds, and so we have maybe 2-3 minutes of questions and answers. So, again, thank you for your attention. I hope you learned something about your city that you didn't know before, and an organization that's important to the city.